Vineeta Singh.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Please come up on stage.
And to host this session will be joining us Srinath Sridharan. He's a policy researcher and developer. He's right there.
Mr. Srinath Sridharan, could you please come up onto the stage? A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Vineeta Singh and Srinath Sridharan.
Yours.
Hi, good afternoon. So Vineeta, I want to come to you on this question about equitable boards, and it's not about gender lens alone. Equitable doesn't mean gender alone. There's a lot of aspects of equitableness in terms of fairness. Today we see wokeism, ageism, so many things on boards. And what I want to bring you in your own journey as an entrepreneur. What are your observations about equitableness? I'm sure you faced a lot of glass ceiling. And how did you cross them?
Firstly, thank you so much for this privilege to be here at this event. I'm very grateful. To be on this hot seat, I don't even have a cool picture like that. But I'm going to get that in place for my next year's introductions. So in my own journey as an entrepreneur, I think for entrepreneurs, survival is your first and foremost responsibility, because 99% startups fail. They die within their first 2 years. Even after funding, 90% startups fail. And so somewhere in the journey of surviving and just hanging on, because the #1 responsibility of a founder is actually to keep their company afloat. In that journey of surviving to building a large business, at some point you have to figure out corporate governance, having an equitable board. And I think we're on that journey, and it's very important because there is now enough data. I mean, there have been Fortune 500 companies observed over a period of time where participation of women at the CXO level and in boards leads to, on average, more profits. And there's data there. In a country like India, where less than 20% participation of women in workforce, there is an $800 billion GDP impact at stake if you're not able to move this number by another 10%. So I think there is a logical requirement of more equitable organizations from top to bottom. At the bottom now, at the entry level, we are seeing 33% participation, but like the anchor mentioned, there is the whole 25 to 40 years, which is a grave for women's careers where we get dropped off. And at the top, it's just about 5%. And I think that's what we need to solve for, because if we don't solve for it, it is going to be expensive for the economy and for the profits of the organization. And I think a person can make a big difference. If I talk about Sugar, in an organization of 4,000, we have 3,000 women. That's about 75% participation of women in workforce. If I talk about my own investments in Shark Tank, more than 50% of the capital invested by me on Shark Tank has gone to organizations, companies, which have at least one woman founder. And I think just starting that flywheel, you can, if you put some women in decision-making positions, there is the ability to start making organizations more equitable. Because if you look at the funding gap, less than 2% of the capital globally goes to women-led companies. Now, as opposed to that, in Shark Tank, you have about more than 40% representation of women founders, which is leading to some investors like me putting 50% of our capital in women. And I think that's just the beginning, but we just have to do the best that we can.
Sure. Staying on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Is it only the idea? Is it the promoter? Or is there concept of around their ethics and integrity towards board governance? What makes you sign that check?
Yeah. So actually, idea is the least important, because what really matters is not idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. What matters is execution, and for that, the founder is very important. So I think the only thing we are gauging in the limited time that we have, and people don't believe that, we are actually clueless about what is the next pitch going to be, but we are. I mean, we just have those few minutes to make that decision. And the only bet that you're taking at that point of time is on the jockey. Basically, the person who's driving that business, the founder. And you do have to you cannot figure out corporate governance and integrity in those few minutes, but that intellectual honesty of owning up. Is the founder honestly owning up to their failures and talking about them openly and has some learnings from them? Is the founder trying to sugarcoat all the gaps in their story by trying to gloss over them, push them under the carpet, or are they being honest, saying, this is my weakness, this is what I need to learn? And that can help you predict whether there will be eventual integrity, corporate governance. So I think idea is the least important. Product is very less important. What is most important is the founder. Because at the end of the day, including Sugar was born out of a business that started off as an e-commerce subscription but evolved into a makeup brand. And pivots and evolution happen in a startup's journey. It's very important that you have like an honest founder who's like a learning machine, constantly reading the market and iterating their business accordingly.
Sure. I mean, we were speaking before the panel about how boards are becoming refreshingly different and with ability to have candid conversations in younger organizations as yours. I mean, give me some context and color of one of if I say corporate governance to the old school professionals, it'll sound very boring, fuddy-duddy, and almost like old boys network. But in the startup world, there is also a fear now saying, will innovation come at the cost of compliance? And I'm not taking any names here. How do you balance this?
Yeah, so I think, in my experience, the thumb rule is that you are struggling for survival in the first 0 to 100 journey, which is, say, 100 employees. After that, you are responsible for the families and the lives and the careers of those 100 people. And you don't have an option not to be compliant, not to prioritize corporate governance. And that, wow, explosive. And that switch happens in that journey. And a lot of founders, if you wait, a lot of companies wait, I will do this at the time of IPO, I will build a board. Before my IPO, I will start putting ESG in place. I'll start thinking of diversity just before the listing. But that's too late because the bad habits and the bad culture and the policies have gone across the system. So you need to start at least by the time you have 100 employees in really building processes and systems around compliance, corporate governance, because there is a responsibility. I started up 15 years back where entrepreneurship was considered to be unemployment. And if you got somebody to come on board, my first employee ever is here with me. When she had to join the organization, she had to really convince her family that this is not the greatest career nosedive of her life, joining a startup. Now, in the last 15 years, we've come from there to it becoming aspirational on Shaadi.com. There are parents looking for people working at startups and looking at entrepreneurs to get their kids married to. That evolution around startups being aspirational has come at a large cost. And that, I think, is a responsibility as an entrepreneur to make sure that we don't go backwards in this reputation that we've now managed to build as a responsible set of organizations. And which is why I think it's super critical that by the time you are 100 employees, you start having those processes in place. And I feel that, there is a lot that founders can do also around diversity because you're building a culture from scratch, right? So one of the biggest reasons women get left behind from the top layer, the CXO levels, is because organizations don't know how to promote women. And that's because our performance management systems are messed up. If I ask you a question, I'm a runner, right? If I ask you, who's faster, men or women, what are you going to say? It's a question. Who's faster, men or women? How many of you say men? I mean, people are not raising their hands, but they think men, right? How many of you say women? Wow, okay. I'm happy to see all the women standing up for women because that's another debate we had. Do women stand up for women or not? But the question is that what is the distance? If you're talking about a 100-meter or a 5-kilometer, men are faster. The moment you come close to a marathon, the gap really narrows to under 10%. And then you talk about more than 100 kilometers, women are faster, because there is resilience, there's grit. Mothers are the fastest in ultra marathons, the 200 kilometers and above. So it's all about the context, right? The moment your performance management systems have assertiveness and networking as like the top 2 criteria, women will get left behind. Now, startups have the ability to rethink these performance management criteria and say, what is it that we can do to have women getting treated fairly in this performance review system so that they have a chance to come up to that CXO level, because women do make great leaders, not in the traditional definition of leadership, which was an alpha, which is about, being a genius, authoritative leader, but they bring in the vulnerability, they bring the humility, which Ayushman was talking about. And I think just changing the narrative on how women are reviewed in organizations can actually float up more women and help us get through that glass ceiling as we talk about.
So the last question, what will be your message, one message to other entrepreneurs about creating equal boards?
Firstly, my message to entrepreneurs is that we're in a fantastic decade. I mean, there is no other place or time to build than right now in India, because we're the only economy at that scale growing at 7-8%, 800 million internet users, which is 5x from what it was 10 years back. 50% of the digital transactions in the world are actually happening in India. So my first message, of course, to men and women building is that this is the right place, right time, right market. So be ambitious and build something awesome, because there's no other time you'll get an opportunity like this. And for equitability, I would just say that there is a direct GDP and net profit correlation between having more diversity, which includes diversity of gender, but also age, background, and other factors. So having diversity is a business decision, not a social decision, and look at it as one.
Thank you, Vineeta. Thank you for your candid views.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Vineeta Singh.
Vineeta, before you leave, I do have a quick couple of questions. I'll give you the mic back. Something very interesting you said, and this was also reiterated by...
Vineeta, how about you come this side, please?
This was also reiterated by once I heard Priyanka Chopra saying, you do not compete physically, you compete cerebrally. We are not looking for equal competitive, lifting the weight, building biceps. Yeah. We're looking for equal opportunities when it comes to cerebral quotient. Yeah. Today, are you looking at those opportunities emerging, especially from women entrepreneurs?
Absolutely looking at a lot of opportunities, because there is effort being put in by the government to put more money in the hands of women as entrepreneurs. And the greatest barrier for women entrepreneurs always has been lack of capital across the world. Less than 2% of funding goes to women. Now in India, there have been these funds and capital created, which is making it easier for women entrepreneurs to raise capital. And I feel when women raise capital and build organizations, they hire more women. It starts a flywheel of one, role models and mentors, and second, of just better policies that are more supportive of women. And we're at the starting point of that flywheel, and I feel next 10 years, all these conversations about not having enough representation of women will dramatically change.
Okay, and to all those women who are hoping to be the next people you fund on Shark Tanks, as a shark, what exactly would you like to tell them?
I want to tell women that I know when we are growing up, we get judged for being ambitious. She's so over the top and out there. I think take all that judgment, all that criticism, and make it your biggest weapon. Bring your ambition out. Be the most ambitious person that you know, because I think it's time for women to be.
All right, Vineeta, thank you very much. Be the ambitious person you want to be. Be over the top if that's what you like. I think that's the message coming in. Vineeta, thank you very much. Pleasure listening to you. Srinath, please do stay on.
All right then, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to finally expand this discussion as well. We've got some more important entrepreneurs talking about how it's important in today's time to make sure that the boardroom is equitable as well, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so you can also go and have your seat, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, coming up next is a set of very important entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, and now that we've heard Vineeta, I think we've set the ball rolling for what is in store as far as a discussion on equitable boardroom is concerned. I think, needless to say, we want more women and we want more women